Hello everybody, welcome to Dirty Air. I'm your host Alex Lambert, and let's talk about NASCAR's newest super speedway race, NASCAR in Atlanta today. I think we can all agree that this is a super speedway racetrack similar to Daytona, Talladega. It definitely had its differences, which we'll get into, but it was very similar to that racetrack. Certainly very entertaining. We had a lot of wrecks. We had some great side-by-side action all day, probably even more so than we saw in the Daytona 500 a few months ago or a few weeks ago. But let's talk about it. First off, William Byron gets his third career win, his second super speedway win. I believe he got one at Daytona, he's got one in Miami, and then he got one today in Atlanta. And that means that Rick Hendrick's Chevrolets have won 3 of the first 5 races with 3 different drivers in 2022. Also, 5 different winners in 5 different races so far in the 2022 NASCAR season. Let's get into it. First off, I want to talk about the track. I want to talk about the positives and the negatives of the Atlanta new configuration. This is a completely new racetrack, essentially. It's nothing similar to the Atlanta that we've seen for the past, 40, 50 years. Nothing even close. A completely new racetrack, essentially. So let's kind of take everything we knew about Atlanta previously and throw it out the books because that racetrack's no longer in existence. It's a completely new racetrack, completely new style of racing. It is now NASCAR's third super speedway race. Now, let's get into it. I want to compare Atlanta to Daytona and Talladega because one thing I noticed, and this is a big one thing that I noticed about the differences between the 2.5 mile racetracks and the 1.5 mile racetrack today that we raced on Atlanta. Today, you could get runs on the leader way quicker. If you notice in the Daytona 500 and at Talladega, it takes a little while to establish a run. Sometimes it even takes more than just 2 race cars to get in a draft together and push past the leader. Today, almost you could do it without a push. If you just got behind the leader and timed it right, you could essentially get the lead just like that. So that is certainly something to note as well at Atlanta Motor Speedway that was different from the other super speedway races, because usually at Daytona and Talladega, it takes multiple cars and it takes a little bit of time. It can take almost a quarter of a lap or maybe a little bit less to gain a run on the leader and get that speed. Today at Atlanta, it seemed like runs were coming in very quickly. It seemed like the cars were a bit looser today, which is obviously a concern. So definitely something to note, the differences from Atlanta to the other super speedway races, the other pack racing style races. It was certainly entertaining. It was a great race today. It was very entertaining, but I do have a few concerns about NASCAR super speedway racing. First off, I think six super speedway races is enough. I've already, heard talks about should we add more, should we not add more. I don't think NASCAR is going to add any more or try to add any more, which is great. I think 6 is enough. Did we need this to be a super speedway race? I'm not sure. It was definitely entertaining, but it does have a luck aspect to it, a very lucky aspect. And as a fan, I don't want to watch every week or, every race that I tune into to be completely depicted off of luck. I'm a Kyle Busch fan, so obviously I'm upset that my driver got wrecked and he essentially couldn't have really done much to dodge the accident. Couldn't have really done a whole lot to win. And that's the same thing for every driver. Not saying William Byron got lucky. Obviously, he made the right moves at the right time, was able to get the lead, was able to hold off the lead. But there definitely is a huge luck aspect into the new configuration here in Atlanta and in these super speedway races. And we see it every year at Daytona, Talladega, and now we're going to see it every year here in Atlanta. There is somewhat of a luck aspect. Now, obviously, there's your drivers who tend to run up front at the super speedways. You go to Hamlin, you go to Blaney, even Bubba Wallace, who was running up front till he got wrecked at the end. So there's definitely an aspect where you see the same drivers up front, but the winner usually, at least out of the top 5, is a lot of times depicted off of luck, which isn't great for NASCAR, but it's certainly, like I said, an entertaining race today, but nothing that we don't need any more than 6 of those in a single NASCAR season. Another main concern that I have, and I think this is a big concern, is the cars seemed very loose. And when we go back to this racetrack in July, the track's going to be a lot hotter because, for one, in Atlanta in July, it's probably going to be, 90-something degrees potentially, unless it's like a cloudy, overcast day. It might be a little cooler. But overall, in July, during the day, we're going to be racing at Atlanta. The track's going to be slippery. Today we raced, it's the first day of spring, we raced in March. It was about 60 degrees air temperature. I don't know the track temperature, but it was not as hot as it will be in July. That is a concern because when we go there in July, are the cars going to be just slipping and sliding, wrecking constantly? That's definitely a major concern. Obviously the teams will look into this, but there needs to be a way that we can find, the teams especially need to find a way to make their car still be fast, still be able to make moves, but handle better, because I don't like when there's a car that just kind of gets loose and causes a wreck just because barely getting tapped by Kyle Busch. Austin Dillon wrecked today, just barely got tapped by Kyle Busch, and it caused a huge wreck, taking out multiple drivers. That's something that I don't think fans want to see as much of, because that kind of takes it out of the driver's hands in a lot of ways. We saw the same thing happen with Eric Almirola at the end of the race. He was up front, had a chance to fight for the lead, and then just got bumped a little bit coming on the quad oval, and then spins out, and it had essentially no control over it because the car got so loose. We know these next gen cars are loose. That's definitely a concern that NASCAR can obviously look into, but these teams also need to find a way to work on these race cars and get them a little bit more handling better, so that way they don't have the same issues happen when they go back on a much slicker racetrack in the summer in Atlanta, or in Daytona, when we go back to Daytona in the summer. I think we raced there in the last week of August. It's going to be hot, even though it's at night. It'll still be a hotter racetrack, so we need to make sure, obviously, that issue can be resolved. Because I don't like seeing a bunch of wrecks that happen like that. Another thing that I want to mention, I just want to bring it up, is this was a long race today. The race started at 3 o'clock and ended at 7:30. It was a long race. I think this should have been a 400-mile race. It seems like Atlanta, 500 miles, regardless of the configuration, is just a long, grueling day. And it's not that the racing wasn't exciting, but when you've been watching the race for over 2 hours and they're not even at the halfway point yet, I think the race could be a little bit shorter. I believe a 400-mile race would be 267 laps. That sounds a lot better than, the over 300 laps that we had today. So that's just my opinion. I think it would be better as a 400-mile race. It would be more intense because obviously it would be shorter. It'd be more compact. You have to do better, obviously earlier on than you would. So I think bumping the race back down to a 400-mile race would be better than having a long 500-mile race. I just wanted to touch on that for a brief moment. That's obviously not a main concern, but I did want to mention that. Another thing, let's go ahead and I'm gonna go down the top 5 today, because I had to talk a little bit about the racetrack and stuff. I don't really think there's a whole lot to mention after the bottom 5. Chase Elliott, Chris Buescher had some good runs, but let's talk about the top 5. Let's kind of go through it. First off, William Byron, your winner at Atlanta, his 3rd career win. This is huge for him. By the way, every driver at Hendrick has now won this season except Chase Elliott. So that's going to put a lot of pressure on Chase Elliott, who finished 6th today. We'll have to see how that continues to work. But anyway, a great win for William Byron. He showed a lot of speed today. He did everything right. He got the lead fairly. He actually had the lead for quite some time, but he was able to hold off those guys behind him. Really, the guys behind him made a lot of bad moves. Especially Christopher Bell, who I'm definitely going to mention a little bit later. They made some bad moves, kind of stalling themselves out and letting William Byron essentially have the lead and letting him kind of coast to the win, because when you ride side by side, it stalls the cars out. William Byron obviously wanted to make the decision. Going into the final restart, I was thinking, I would want to be second, because I would want to get pushed right past the leader. With as quick as you can get a run going, I would think I would want to be second and just slingshot right past the leader, which is what we saw all day in the entire 500-mile race until the very end. William Byron decided he wanted that lead as quick as he could get it. He kept the lead through the restarts. He kept the lead and was able to hold off Bubba Wallace, hold off Ross Chastain and Daniel Suarez and Kurt Busch to get that win. So a great job for William Byron. Also one of those drivers that tends to run up front at the super speedway races. Got taken out in Daytona early. I feel like I always talk about this after super speedway races, but he really does run up front. He has a win at Daytona. I believe it was 2020 in the summer race that he got the win at. And then, of course, he always tends to be running up front until he gets caught up in somebody else's trouble a lot of the times. Gets caught up in a wreck fairly early in these super speedway races, it seems like, for William Byron. But obviously he knows how to make the right moves at the right times at this racetrack, which is certainly something to note because he finished up front. Another driver, like I said, who has been running up front all season long, has got his 3rd top 3 in a row. He finished 3rd in Las Vegas. He finished 2nd last week in Phoenix, and he actually finished 2nd today, even though he was 3rd across the line. Christopher Bell got a penalty for going below the yellow line, even though it was a red and white line, but they still call it the double yellow line rule. So he got a penalty, so Ross Chastain does get 2nd. Another great day for the Trackhouse Racing organization. Once again, Daniel Suarez finished 4th. Great day for them. Those guys were pushing each other perfectly throughout the day. They timed everything right. Ross Chastain was running up front earlier, had a tire go down, causing him to slide up into the wall and slam into the wall. Another one of those issues that I think NASCAR could try to look at to fix. I don't want these tires going out and causing drivers to wreck in front of the field. That's not good at super speedway races. But just a great day for overall for Ross Chastain to be able to come back from that incident. The theme of the season, comebacks. Drivers have issues early on in the race and are able to come back and get a good finish. That's like the entire season in a nutshell so far. So Ross Chastain's second place finish, great for him. But I'm noticing that urge to finally get that win is starting to pick up for Ross, because if you know, when they interviewed him after Las Vegas or online, what he was saying and stuff like that, he was happy he got a top 3. And then last week, he was once again happy, got a top 3, happy he finished second, smiling. He was smiling again today, but you can tell he was a little bit aggravated that he wasn't able to go past William Byron and get the win. So he was obviously a little bit frustrated, understandably. And so I think the win's coming. I mean, he's running up front every week. He ran up front today, made the right moves, was able to come back from a huge mistake today, or a huge unfortunate event that happened to him early on in the race, and was able to come back. So great day for him. A great day for the 2311 racing team as well. Kurt Busch finishing 3rd. Bubba Wallace didn't get the finish that he probably was. He ended up finishing 13th, but he was running up front the entire end of the race, was in 2nd for a long time. Then once again, that car got loose and slid up the racetrack. Another, like I said, that problem that I hope we can fix at some point. And Bubba Wallace did get loose, and I don't think he hit the wall, but he got up loose there and then lost a bunch of position. He lost all his momentum, and cars just went flying right by him at the end. Then, of course, ended up getting caught in that late race wreck on the coming to the checkered flag. So an unfortunate event for Darrell Wallace to not finish up front, not get a top 10, even though he was definitely running top 10. But definitely a great day for him. Like I said, I've mentioned him after the Daytona 500 review. One of those exceptionally good super speedway racers. He was up front at Daytona. He was up front at Talladega last year. He won Talladega last year. So that typically tends to be a theme for Bubba Wallace to be up front at the super speedway races. Definitely want to watch him going into Talladega next month and see what he can do. Let's see. 4th, Daniel Suarez. Like I said, the Trackhouse Racing Organization, great job today. Daniel Suarez made a great move, pushing Ross Chastain at the end of this race, trying to get up front, couldn't quite get there at the end, but a great move by Daniel Suarez. And, of course, Corey LaJoie, best career finish for Corey LaJoie in the 7 car today, ended up finishing in the 5th position. So top 5 for him is obviously a big deal for that team, that organization. Very excited to see those guys run up front. You know, super speedway racing tends to favor sometimes the underdog race car drivers. So certainly excited for Corey LaJoie. A great finish for him. Now, I want to touch up on Christopher Bell, because I'm a bit frustrated with what he did at the end of the race, and I'm sure there's going to be a couple other people that are going to notice this. Christopher Bell, for one, is coming to the line, coming on the back straightaway at Atlanta, right? Why did he not push Ross Chastain past the leader? William Byron would have been a sitting duck if everybody behind him would have played this race better. And I think that's a major concern. I think William Byron probably wouldn't have won this race. Maybe if Christopher Bell had have pushed Ross Chastain, I think Ross Chastain would have gave William Byron a run for his money. But I don't understand the move. I don't know why Christopher Bell, for one, went below the red and white line, which is obviously going to be a penalty. So obviously he's going to finish, you know, the last car in the lead lap, which was 23rd. So he loses all the position that he had for going below the yellow line. And then when you try to pass the leader, or try to pass for second place instead of work with second place to try to go past the leader, I don't understand it. It stalls everybody out. So all you're doing is allowing the leader to keep that lead, and you essentially take out your entire shot to win when you stall yourself out like that. And I don't understand why they do it. They did it all weekend long, it seemed like, in the Xfinity race, in the truck race they did it, and the leader won because the second place or the third place driver tried to pass the second place driver. That eliminates your entire shot to win. If the third place driver would push the second place driver past the leader, then you have a chance to win. I don't understand it. It was really frustrating. That's something that cannot happen. We have 6 super speedway races on the schedule now. One of those are in the playoffs at Talladega. You cannot allow that to be a problem. That's an obvious issue, and obviously going below the yellow line, or the red and white line in this situation, is a major problem. You cannot do that. It's really frustrating to see, and I hope Christopher Bell can look at this and think, okay, obviously I can't do that anymore, because it's really frustrating to watch as a fan when drivers do that. I don't know why they do it, but it's certainly something. Next week, we go to the first road course race, COTA, Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas. It's going to be exciting. I'm really excited for this race. The first road course race of 2022. We're going to see how these next-gen cars race on a road course. It's going to be absolutely wild, left and right turns. It's going to be crazy. And I'm excited for it. If I want to give you a driver to watch, I want you to watch the road course king right now, Chase Elliott, because Chase Elliott, for one, is the only Hendrick driver that has not won so far in 2022. So obviously a little bit of fire, under his eyes for that. He wants to make sure he's up there winning with his teammates. He doesn't want to be the fourth guy at the Hendrick Motorsports organization when he was, 2 years ago, the top guy at Hendrick Motorsports. That's obviously not good for him. Obviously, he's also very good at the road courses. Both of his wins last year were at road courses, which was Circuit of the Americas that he got to win there last year. And then, of course, he won at Road America last year as well. So as much as I hate to say it, definitely want to watch Chase Elliott next week in Texas. That's all I have to say. It's all I have to talk about. And of course, about Kyle Busch getting taken out in the race today. Let's get rowdy.